Joining us now, 5th Congressional District candidate, Republican, Jon Golnik. Jon, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I guess what made you decide now was the time that you had to step up and run? Because I know, reading your bio, you were heavy into politics. I know when I first kind of got involved, it was the Romney campaign against Ted Kennedy. 1994, you were right there at my first year in college. But you said in your bio, it seems like you kind of fell off the wagon of you kind of got sick of the games, the political games, and the name calling. What got you back in? Why now?
I got tired. I got tired of not being listened to, and I became very disillusioned with the direction of the country, with the buyouts, the takeovers, the runaway spending, things like that. I don't believe that. The one thing that I do know is that I know what's best for myself and my family, and I don't need the leadership in Washington D.C. telling me that somehow they know better than I know. And that's really the extent of why I got where I found myself where I am right now, running for office.
That's fantastic, Jon. Thanks so much again for coming down. And I know when you were in the studio with us a few months ago, we talked about the health care bill that Nikki Tsongas did support, contrary to many of her constituents who were against the bill. Can you just let us know, briefly, we know your stance on the health care law, but what would you do going to Washington regarding that law?
The problem for me, health care is about opening access, and you open access by lowering costs. And unfortunately, I don't believe that this bill is going to do that. This legislation that's been passed, I think it does need to be repealed. I think it needs to be replaced. I think you can focus on a number of different things to lower costs. I think you need to allow people to buy insurance across state lines. That's going to cause insurance companies to have to compete for our business by lowering their premiums, but still maintaining the quality of care.
And another law that was another bill that was just passed, and I'm sure you've been reading about our 41st Senator Scott Brown took a lot of heat for supporting the financial reform package. And just give us your thoughts on what did you think of that bill, and what does that spell for Massachusetts businesses and banks?
With the financial reform package that's on the verge of, it's going to be signed, it's been passed, it'll be signed into law. I mean, once again, we have another 2,000-plus page bill that a lot of people, and even by Senator Dodd's own admission, we won't know what the impact of that will be.
2,300
pages. We don't know the impact, what the impact of that bill will be until it's been implemented over a period of years. Look, we do know one thing. Regulations increase the cost of doing business. Increasing the cost of doing business is not born in a vacuum by these large companies. It's passed down to the working men and women of the country, of the Commonwealth, and of the district. So
you're a small business owner, right?
That's
Tell
right.
us again.
That's right. I am a licensed reseller of Boston College merchandise, and we're one of the handful of resellers that the NCAA permits to resell anything that's branded with the Boston College logo. So,
Jon, you come from the small town of Carlisle in an awfully big district, and it's been a while since we've talked to you. Tell us a little bit about what you've learned over the campaign trail about the district. I mean, one thing that I know on your website, which I haven't seen many people do, is you have your information available in 4 different languages.
We do. We recognize that the district is a diverse district. Now, we've just recently changed our website because one of the problems we were having is we needed to make sure that it was very dynamic and that we could upload information relatively quickly. We haven't carried over the language changes. We did have our language in English, in Portuguese, in Spanish, and in Khmer. So we recognize that it is a diverse district. We also recognize that as Republicans, we talk an awful lot about being a big tent and about being welcoming of people across communities. And I'm a big believer that we need to show with our actions, not only with our words, that we mean that. So
what is the number one issue people are talking to you about when you're knocking on their doors and shaking their hands?
Jobs. We believe that this election cycle, everything revolves. It's going to be a pocketbook issue campaign. Everything revolves around jobs. We can talk about renegotiating people's mortgages that will lower their mortgage rates from $350 to $325. But at the end of the day, if they're not working, they're not paying their mortgage. And that goes with health care as well. People need to be able to have access to health care. But if they're not working, chances are they don't have access to health care. So we believe that everything revolves around jobs. We believe that there's been a lot of talk in Washington about trying to create jobs, but for the past 18 months, the focus has been elsewhere. I think that's one of the unintended consequences of the health care bill that was recently passed back in the spring, that 12 months was spent trying to work that through Congress, and when we probably should have been focusing on creating jobs. And I'm talking about jobs being created in the private sector, sustainable jobs, not jobs that are being created with stimulus money in the public sector.
John, you mentioned jobs, and the Merrimack Valley is a very important area in the state. What would you do to help generate jobs within the Merrimack Valley?
You know, a big problem that we face in this country, in my opinion, from a job creation perspective, is it's too expensive to do business. You know, we've got a 35% corporate tax rate. That's the second highest in the world after Japan. It's too high. It needs to be lowered. I'm not talking about dropping it precipitously to 20 or 25%. Let's drop it to 30% to start. The second big problem that there is, and this is probably even a bigger issue, is that a lot of these small to mid-sized businesses don't have access to capital right now. There's plenty of projects out there that would make sense, that would create jobs, especially in the building industry, but these small businesses just don't have access to capital through the small banks. I know we hear they're lending, but the fact of the matter remains is they're not. So I find it kind of interesting that, you know, these large financial companies that first started this problem with our economy have access to low interest rate credit, but the small businesses don't. So Wall Street thrives and Main Street continues to suffer.
Do you think that Scott Brown made the right vote on the financial reform package?
One of my biggest problems with the financial package that was just recently passed is it creates the Consumer Financial Protection Agency, which I think is going to create just layers and layers of bureaucracy, which again will increase costs. So you want me to answer the question? I wouldn't have voted for the legislation, personally.
You are listening to Politically Active here on WCCM 1110 AM, and we are live from Latitude Sports Club in Methuen on Pleasant Valley Street. Come on down. We have a lot of politicians here, both from the local. We have a lot of state candidates, and right now we're talking to Jon Golnik, who is a candidate, Republican candidate for the 5th District Congressional seat, running against Democrat Nikki Tsongas. And John, I wanted to switch gears about immigration. You may have, I know you were standing and hearing about, we had a local town, basically another town denounce the Arizona law. And I know from looking at your website, you're about enforce, not reform. Can you just elaborate on that and your position regarding immigration?
You know, I try to approach most problems in my life and also now as I'm running for office in a practical manner. And if someone could show me that amnesty actually worked, I will be all ears. But, you know, back in 1986, Ronald Reagan signed a comprehensive immigration reform package that gave amnesty to 2.6 or 2.9 million illegals. Now, 24 years later, we have 12 million. It didn't work. We have magnets in this country that attract people here. I think the biggest magnet of all would be amnesty. We talk about reform. I'm beginning to think now that when we hear the word reform coming out of Washington, D.C., that's just a code word for expanded government. I think we need to enforce. We don't know what we need to reform if we're not enforcing our laws. We need to secure our borders. You know, a third of the immigrants that come here, illegal immigrants, come here illegally on visas, but then overstay their visas. So, you know, since 1996, there's been a plan in place to implement check-in, check-out for these people that overstay their visas. That hasn't been implemented. What are we waiting for? We also need to enforce employee verification. You know, every person that comes into this country now, at least, especially the ones that come in with visas, are fingerprinted. It seems to me that we have that information available to us. We need to enforce this. So these are some of the things that I would do. I don't think, you know, if we could do things like double this number of people who are patrolling our borders on the south of our country, our southern borders. There's 20,000 there now. We could double that to 40,000. It would be about $3.5 billion. That seems like a lot of money, but if you take into account that illegals are costing the country anywhere from $65 billion to $200 billion, depending on whose numbers you want to believe, your return on that investment will come relatively quickly. And it's $3.3 billion is just a line item in the auto bailout. So
now, John, you mentioned obviously one of your biggest things is enforcement of the current laws. How do you feel about the current administration's decision to basically sue Arizona for doing the federal government's job and protecting the citizens of not only Arizona but the United States and trying to curb this problem?
Right. I think that the Arizona legislation illustrates a perfect example of what happens when the federal government's not enforcing the laws that they have on the books. And Arizona, of course, is in a very difficult situation because being on the border with Mexico, they do not only have an economic cost of illegal immigration, there's a criminal cost as well. So you see, you know, killings, kidnappings, rapes, things of that nature. I completely understand why the Arizonans certainly passed that legislation. And the one thing that I was always very confused about is that Secretary Napolitano is the former chief executive of Arizona, having been the governor. I was surprised that it's gone this far. It seems to me that given her relationships, especially as being a borderline state with this country of Mexico, she has relationships with people there. It seems to me the first thing I would have done is certainly would have pulled the governors from the states that border Arizona. and had a discussion with them. I mean, we have violence spilling over the border with Mexico and impacting citizens of our country. I think it's a big issue.
I mean, and I've read in certain places too that Phoenix, Arizona, is actually second or third, I think, worldwide in kidnappings.
Right.
And that's obviously in drug dealing and things like that,
with the drug
that are coming over the borders and back and forth.
That's correct.
So it's kind of confusing to me that all of a sudden, Arizona is stepping up to try and protect its people.
Right.
And President Obama and his administration have decided to sue the state for doing their job. I mean, how do you feel about this lawsuit if it goes forward?
I think like a lot of things as we approach elections, I think that they're used to make political capital, and I think that this lawsuit could be a good example of that. I don't agree with the lawsuit. I certainly support the Arizona legislation. Again, because it is illustrative of what happens when the federal government fails to secure the borders. And, border security is the purview of the federal government. And this isn't being done, and Arizona now is being forced to step in and have to provide this for themselves.
John, let's switch gears a little bit. I want to ask you a question as to why do you think you would do a better job than Nikki Tsongas if you have a primary coming up in September. Moving forward, if you win that primary, how would you do your job differently than Nikki Tsongas, or why should she lose her job?
In a nutshell, I think that I will listen, I will be more engaged, and I'll be more responsive. I can tell people that all day long. I hope that as people have seen our campaign, which we announced back in November, I think we're trying to show with our actions, and we're trying to be engaged with people. We've gone on listening tours. We're on the third leg of our listening tour, actually starting this afternoon, where we're going to be going to groups of businesses in Haverhill, and then on Thursday in Lawrence. We'll be back up in Methuen next week. At the very beginning of our race, we went to every town in the district during the congressional recess to meet with people, to talk to people. We did tours of the commuter train stations, which was the second leg. This business tour was the third leg. So we recognize that our loyalty lays with no one but the voters of the 5th District. It doesn't lay with the leadership in Washington, D.C. Representative Tsongas has voted 98% of the time with the Democratic leadership. This is in a district where 55% of the voters are unaffiliated. At the end of the day, when people ask me where my loyalties lay with the people of the 5th District. They're my ultimate boss.
Stepping back a little bit, obviously you talked about, I mentioned a few seconds ago, how you do have a primary in September. What differentiates you from your three Republican opponents?
There's a couple of things. Number one, I think we're working harder than all of our Republican opponents. Number two, and like it or not, the fact of the matter remains is that we've raised more money than all of our opponents combined. It sounds, you don't like to talk about fundraising, but unfortunately fundraising is the mother's milk of politics. We've raised more money, and I think we're in the best position to win this race.
And John, just another quick question. You've talked about jobs, right? And I just want to get your position regarding there's been a lot of squabbling in Congress regarding extending the federal unemployment insurance. And what's your position there? Some folks have said it's just gone on too long, but frankly, like you said, there are folks that need to pay their bills who have been out of work for a long time.
Look, I certainly would support extending the unemployment benefits. However, we need to find a place where that money can come from. And people don't like it when I try to bring decisions made at the federal government down to a household level. But if we needed to put in a new furnace, or we needed to do something in our home which was an extended cost, we would need to find a place to pay for that somewhere else. Look, we have $300 billion sitting in that stimulus package. Why don't we take the money from there? Let's take this money from somewhere and be able to pay for those. I don't have a problem doing it, but we cannot continue to spend and not have a place in which we can get that money from.
Now, John, there are a lot of people in your race, and so it must be difficult to distinguish yourself. I know here at Politically Active and the Eagle Tribune are working hard right now on trying to get together a debate, and we're wondering if you'd be participating in that. We're hoping for August. We're looking at Methuen, and I think we'll be ready to announce that news relatively shortly.
Oh, we'll go to as many debates as you choose to have, and anyone chooses to have. It's important that the people of the district get to see everyone. Look, people do not support candidates impetuously. They need to look at them, see them, hear them again and again, and we owe it to the people of the district to go out and be seen and certainly compare and contrast ourselves with our primary opponents.
Well, hopefully we'll be announcing that. Hopefully by the end of the day today.
Hopefully.
We'll be able to do that now. We want to thank you once again for coming in today.
Thank you very much.
Hopefully we'll have you on soon, and we'll definitely see you in August for the debate.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for having me. I'm going to go get on a treadmill now.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
Republican congressional candidate Jon Golnik joining us today. Also, real quick, John, if people want your website.
Oh, my website is www.jongolnik.com. That's JONGOLNIK.com.
No C.
No C. Everyone puts a C in it, but there's no C. I don't take it personally. You just won't get to the site though if you put a C in.
And no H in the John as well.
There is no. It's like John Bon Jovi. I'm going to see a concert on Saturday for my birthday gift for my family.
Oh, me too.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Down in Gillette. Oh, that'll be a lot of fun.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks very much.
We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be back with the Fit Tip